ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामी नित्यनाम्ने नमस्ते सरस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री द्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे. Starting with text 20. Om Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचिन्
न जायते म्रियते वा कदाचित्
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
नायं भूत्वा भविता वा न भूयः
अजो नित्यः शाश्वतोऽयं पुराणो
अजो नित्यः
शाश्वतो यं पुराणं
न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
न
हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे.
Someone like to read?
May I read, Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Translation. For the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been does he ever cease to be. He is unborn, eternal, ever existing, undying, and primeval. He is not slain when the body is slain. Purport. Qualitatively, the small atomic fragmental part of the Supreme Spirit is one with the Supreme. He undergoes no changes like the body. Sometimes the soul is called the steady or kutastha. The body is subject to 6 kinds of transformations. It takes its birth in the womb of the mother's body, remains for some time, grows, produces some effects, gradually dwindles, and at last vanishes into oblivion. The soul, however, does not go through such changes. The soul is not born, but because he takes on a material body, the body takes its birth. The soul does not take birth there. The soul does not die. Anything which has birth also has death. And because the soul has no birth, he therefore has no past, present, or future. He is eternal, ever existing, and primeval. That is, there is no trace in history of his coming into being. Under the impression of the body, we seek the history of birth, etc. of the soul. The soul does not at any time become old as the body does. The so-called old man therefore feels himself to be in the same spirit as in his childhood or youth. The changes of the body do not affect the soul. The soul does not deteriorate like a tree, nor anything material. The soul has no byproduct either. The byproducts of the body, namely children, are also different individual souls, and owing to the body, they appear as children of a particular man. The body develops because of the soul's presence, but the soul has neither offshoots nor change. Therefore, the soul is free from the 6 changes of the body. In the Katha Upanishad, also, we find a similar passage which reads, न जायते न जायते म्रियते वा विपश्चिन् नायं कुतश्चिन्न विभुव कश्चित् अजो नित्यः शाश्वतो यं पुराणो न हन्यते हन्यमाने शरीरे. Katha Upanishad 1.2.18. The meaning and purport of this verse is the same as in the Bhagavad Gita. But here in this verse there is one special word, vipaschit, which means learned or with knowledge. The soul is full of knowledge, or full always with consciousness. Therefore, consciousness is the symptom of the soul. Even if one does not find the soul within the heart where he is situated, one can still understand the presence of the soul simply by the presence of consciousness. Sometimes we do not find the sun in the sky owing to the clouds, or for some other reason, but the light of the sun is always there, and we are convinced that it is therefore daytime. As soon as there is a little light in the sky early in the morning, we can understand that the sun is in the sky. Similarly, since there is some consciousness in all bodies, whether man or animal, we can understand the presence of the soul. This consciousness of the soul is, however, different from the consciousness of the Supreme, because the Supreme Consciousness is all knowledge, past, present, and future. The consciousness of the individual soul is prone to be forgetful. When he is forgetful of his real nature, he obtains education and enlightenment from the superior lessons of Krishna. But Krishna is not like the forgetful soul. If so, Krishna's teachings of Bhagavad Gita would be useless. There are two kinds of souls, namely the minute particle, Anu Atma, and the supersoul, the Vibhu Atma. This is also confirmed in the Katha Upanishad in this way. Anoraniyan mahato mahiyan atmasya jantor nihito guhayam tam akrutah pashyati vita shoko dhatuhu prasadan mahimanam atmana. Katha Upanishad 1.2.20. Both the super soul, Paramatma, and the atomic soul, Jivatma, are situated on the same tree of the body within the same heart of the living being. And only one who has become free from all material desires, as well as lamentations, can, by the grace of the Supreme, understand the glories of the soul. Krishna is the fountainhead of the super soul also, as it will be disclosed in the following chapters. And Arjuna is the atomic soul, forgetful of his real nature. Therefore, he requires to be enlightened by Krishna or by his bona fide representative, the spiritual master. Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So, for the soul, there is never birth nor death. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is described that the soul is actually eternal. It is ever existing. The material domain is just like a covering. Just like we see a passenger enters a vehicle to travel from one destination, from one point to another. So, in the due course of journey, there is a vehicle in which he is situated. Just like when we sit inside a vehicle, we acquire the characteristics of the vehicle. We travel with the same speed. We have a similar momentum and direction. But as soon as the vehicle stops and we step out, we give up the characteristic of the vehicle and we come back to our original character. Like a human being maximum can run at 25-26 kilometers per hour. A vehicle can easily go up to 100, 200, 300 kilometers per hour. When a man is sitting inside the vehicle, he can also go up to 200, 300 kilometers per hour. But when he's outside the vehicle, he comes back to his original characteristic. So likewise, the soul is also situated inside this body, which is like a vehicle. It does not belong to this body. So any living entity who takes birth in this material world has to undergo these transformations. There's birth, then one remains for some time, one produces byproducts, then grows, then shows some, then it starts dwindling, and at last there is a final stage known as death. So, as we have discussed previously also, this death is not really the end of the living entity. It means that he just moves from one situation to another. When the body becomes too old, too useless, then one has to give up this body and take another one. The soul actually is the real principle of life. This body in itself is a combination of chemicals, but it has no life in it. It is described, it will be described later on in Bhagavad Gita, where Krishna describes the nature of material world. We will see Krishna talking about the different types of natures. We have seen in the introduction of Gita also that there are 5 principles of existence: the living entity, the environment or Prakriti, Jiva, Prakriti, then the time factor, Kala, then Karma, the activity, and the controller, Ishvara. So this Prakriti, so this body is actually a part of Prakriti. So previously we had discussed about Jiva and Prakriti. Now we'll further analyze and we'll discuss that this body itself is a part of Prakriti. There are 6 gross elements. There are 5 gross elements: earth, water, fire, air, and ether. There are 3 subtle elements, that is mind, false ego, and intelligence. And all together, these 8 combine to give us what we know as the human body or any living entity's body. So the modern science can only go up to 5 gross elements. Ether, like what we describe as electromagnetic radiations or microwave radiations, are essentially the ether element. But beyond that, mind, intelligence, and false ego is not understood by this modern day scientists. So therefore, that is never discussed. But according to the scriptures, even they are material elements, they are not spiritual. And by definition, material elements means the elements which have no life of their own. Like, for example, this electromagnetic radiation is now carrying my voice from one system to another. So I'm speaking into my laptop, the voice is traveling over the DNA or Telia network and it is reaching your homes. But in itself, the vibrations are not living. What you are hearing is an electronic translation of my voice. It's not me really. So this mind, intelligence, and false ego are subtle elements also. They shape our character in this particular body. I mean, we are convinced that we are human beings, we are engineers or doctors or men or women. We're convinced about all of that. Whereas we are not any of this. The living entity is completely free from all these designations. But when it is embodied, then it acquires a particular designations. So the pig is also convinced that it is a pig. The dog is convinced he's a dog. The cat is convinced that he is a cat. So in this way, all the living entities are convinced by the element of false ego. They think that something is good or bad. For example, if you play the sound of a barking dog, the cat will simply become agitated and run away. So this like or dislike that comes, it comes from the mind element. And how to find food and how to eat it, this comes from the intelligence element. So altogether, these 8 elements, gross and subtle, they create our existence within the material world. So over a period of time, these elements deteriorate. They start dissociating. Just like we see a car, for instance, there's an engine, there's a gearbox, there's a propeller shaft, there are wheels. Everything is working nicely. But if it is not maintained over a period of time, they start wearing out. So as we were discussing yesterday also, like a car engine has a service life of 200,000 kilometers. A truck has service life of around 1.5 to 2 million kilometers. That means that after that kilometerage is over, the vehicle engine will have irreparable defects. The bearing journals will wear out. The shafts may develop micro cracks, which cannot be replaced. So then you have to scrap the whole vehicle. It will not be worth replacing those parts. So likewise, the human body also deteriorates. When a child is born, he acquires all these 8 elements. But as time progresses, these elements start dissociating, and the living entity at one point has to give up this body. On the other hand, the soul itself never deteriorates. It remains as it is. Na jayate mriyate va kadachin. It has no birth, no death. So, for instance, after 100,000 kilometers, you have to replace the car, but you don't replace yourself. 100,000 kilometers would typically be 5 to 10 years of your lifetime of regular driving a car. So, from a practical standpoint, we could say that our human body has much lower deterioration rate than the car. So likewise, this human body also has a deterioration rate, but the soul in itself never deteriorates. The soul remains as it is. Its hopes, desires, everything may remain as it is, but when time comes, the body has to be left behind. That's why we say, the grandfather has passed away. Who has passed away? The grandfather passed away to where? Where did he come from and where did he go? So when we use these expressions, even in English we use this. In Hindi, definitely we have these terms. So when we say, we are not talking about the body, because the body is still there. The grandfather may have passed away, but the body is still in front of us. So who passed away? So it is that living soul inside the heart that has passed away. Ishvara sarva bhutanam Arjuna hrideshe Arjuna tishtati. So this, in the region of heart, the Lord and the soul are both residing. So the soul is completely free from any kinds of changes, and it is full of knowledge. That knowledge is manifested through the elements of intelligence and mind. And the perception of soul takes place through external symptoms. We understand the presence of soul by looking at the external symptoms. So for instance, during the springtime, now that we see in Finland, spring is arriving, we can see that the trees are blossoming. So as soon as the small blossoms start, when the leaves start blossoming on trees, we know immediately the tree is living. We cannot perceive any symptom of life in a tree, but as soon as we see the leaf, we instinctively know that it is alive. So the symptom of life can always be perceived, though the soul itself may not be perceived directly. As we discussed yesterday also, the soul is absolutely microscopic, and not only that, it is subtle. So even if we know the dimensions of soul, we still cannot see it because we don't have the adequate instrumentation to see it. So there are two types of souls which are present within the body: the Atma and the Paramatma, the soul and the super soul. The super soul also exists within the heart region of the body alongside the soul. This super soul is the witness, Paramatma. He is the witness of all the activities and desires of the living entity. So this super soul is the one that decides where the living entity has to go next. For example, if you see these nature documentaries, you will see that there are creatures living in the deserts or big forests, but the creatures know exactly how to find their food and water. So by the arrangement of nature, the lion knows exactly at what time the deer will come out, and the deer also knows. So, and by the arrangement of nature, we'll see that the lion is killing the deer, but the deer has a higher reproduction rate than the lion. So lion may give birth to maybe 1 or 2 cubs, but the deer will reproduce prolifically. So the population remains balanced. So this is the functioning of the super soul. The super soul is guiding all the living entities, and he's also witnessing. So for instance, in human life, if someone wants to enjoy meat, so human body is not exactly suitable for meat eating. The digestive system, the mouth, the teeth, they are not exactly suited for eating meat. On the other hand, a tiger or a lion is more suited. So if a human being is too addicted to eating meat, by the arrangement of nature, this living entity will move to the body of a lion or tiger in the next birth, where he can enjoy this facility. Like today we see, for instance, now the summers are arriving, we'll see that more and more people like to strip naked. I mean, especially here in this part of Europe. Now, according to Vedic etiquettes, human body must never be kept naked. It must always remain covered. Those who like to remain like this, by the arrangement of nature, it is mentioned in Garuda Purana and Padma Purana also, by the arrangement of nature, such a living entity will be taken out of human body and put into the body of trees and plants who can expose themselves all through the year. So in this way, nature makes an arrangement for living entity to move from one body to another based on the desires, and the witness and director of all this movement is the Paramatma within the heart. So this Atma or the living entity is a minute part of the Paramatma. Krishna says later on in this chapter, I mean later on in Bhagavad Gita, he'll say, Mameva Ansh Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. That living entities are my parts and parcels. The symptom of life itself, as we have seen previously in the first chapter, Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman. Chetanas Chetananam, amongst all the living entities, amongst all the conscious entities, there is one supreme conscious. Nityo Nityanam Chetanas Chetananam. Of all the eternals, there is one eternal. Eko Bahunam Yo Vidadhati Kaman. So this one eternal sustains all the other eternals. So the living entity is a separated particle of the Supreme, and he exists in his own domain of consciousness. So the difference is the minute living entity is always forgetful of his position, his knowledge is covered over, but the super soul or Paramatma, his knowledge remains eternal. He knows the past, present, and the future of every living entity, including himself. And in this way, he directs the wanderings of all the living entities. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments here?
Can I ask something, Guruji?
Yes, please.
So when you say this inner mind, outer mind, and I'm just trying to understand the concept now. So is this inner mind somehow comparable to the Paramatma? Because you always say this inner mind tells you the facts and where to go and what to do. It always knows, and the knowledge is within, not outside. I think that's what I'm trying to
find out. Call conscience. We call it Zamir in Urdu. or conscience in English, Antaratma. That is Paramatma. We feel instinctively, oh, this is not right, I should not do this, or maybe I should do this. This consciousness, this extra consciousness that we have, that is Paramatma actually. Conscience. He is guiding us.
Okay, thank you, Guruji.
Thank you. Yes, any other questions? Continue, text 21. Veda vinashinam nityam.
Veda vinashinam nityam.
Ya enam ajam avyayam.
Ya enam
ajam avyayam.
Katham sapurusha partha.
Katham sapurusha
partha.
Kam ghatyati hantikam.
Kam ghatyati
hantikam.
Someone like to read?
I can read.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. O Parth, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, eternal, unborn, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Purport. Everything has its proper utility, and a man who is situated in complete knowledge knows how and where to apply a thing for its proper utility. Similarly, violence also has its utility, and how to apply violence rests with the person in knowledge. Although the justice of the peace awards capital punishment to a person and condemned for murder, the justice of the peace cannot be blamed because he orders violence to another person according to the codes of justice. In Manu Samhita, the law book for mankind, it is supported that a murderer should be condemned to death so that in his next life, he will not have to suffer for the great sin he has committed. Therefore, the king's punishment of hanging a murderer is actually beneficial. Similarly, when Krishna orders fighting, it must be concluded that violence is for supreme justice, and thus Arjuna should follow the instructions, knowing well that such violence committed in the act of fighting for Krishna is not violence at all, because at any rate, the man or rather the soul cannot be killed. So for the administration of justice, so-called violence is permitted. A surgical operation is not meant to kill the patient, but to cure him. Therefore, the fighting to be executed by Arjuna at the instruction of Krishna is with full knowledge. So there is no possibility of sinful reaction. Thank you, Prabhuji. Yes,
Thank you, Hare Krishna. Yes. So, how can a person who knows that the soul is indestructible, unborn, eternal, and immutable kill anyone or cause anyone to kill? Now, in this purport, Srila Prabhupada is talking about violence itself. Because the context of this conversation is violence. The context of this conversation is the impending battle, the war that is about to start. That is the context. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada is explaining why Krishna has stated this particular statement, why Krishna is speaking exactly like this right now. So, see, now this may sound very contradictory, that Krishna is saying that how can, if the soul is indestructible, how can it kill anyone, and how can anyone kill it? The point here is that when we are talking about killing, it's related to the body. The body is the vehicle. For instance, imagine you're driving a car and it suffers, say, an engine blowout, or say the pump blows out, or the crankshaft cracks. Now that's a kind of a catastrophic failure, and your car may probably need to be scrapped. So in such a condition, you have to change the vehicle. You cannot stay in that vehicle. Or for instance, you can imagine, like, when we switched over from Euro 5 to Euro 6 in Europe, all the Euro 5 cars eventually had to be scrapped. So when the vehicle is no longer useful, it has to be taken out of service. It cannot be allowed to travel on the highways. Suppose a car has a brake failure, you're not going to take it out on the road because it is dangerous to drive. So likewise, when a body becomes difficult to sustain, or a body is causing disturbance in the society, then that body has to be taken out. So in this particular context, we see that the Kauravas are creating a chaos in the society. They are dangerous and they are atheistic. They are not following the rules of dharma properly. Such kings are dangerous to the existence of the society. Therefore, they must be removed. Just like a murderer is dangerous. So sometimes, according to justice, a murderer is punished by death. Like for instance, not here in Europe, but in India, United States, we see there is death punishment for murder. So according to scriptures, that is completely justified. Of course, nowadays we don't talk about death punishment for murderers because our justice system is not so strong anymore. No one really knows what is the truth. So therefore, it is like, to be safe, we ban the death penalty. But in reality, if a killer is killed by the state, by the justice, then such a killer is purified of his sinful action of killing. On the other hand, if he's allowed to live and die a natural death, then he will have to suffer the consequences in the next birth. So putting a murderer to death actually is beneficial for the murderer. So here also we see that Kauravas are creating disturbance in the society. Therefore, they deserve to be killed. However, having said that, Arjun need not lament for anything because he's just destroying their bodies, not themselves. He's not destroying the souls of the Kauravas. He's just destroying their bodies. So that is not something to be feared because there will be no sinful reaction because that is as per the law. So dharmam tu sakshat bhagavad pranitam. Dharma is what the Supreme Lord says. So here Krishna is ordering this killing. Therefore, it is to be considered as dharma only. Hare Krishna. Yes. Any questions or comments?
May I ask a simple question? What is the objective of this verse actually? What it wants to say? Is it that killing for a purpose or a good purpose is kind of valid?
Absolutely. So not even that actually, that's a secondary meaning. The primary meaning of this verse is that Arjun should not fear that he's killing his uncles and family members. They are not going to die. They will be transmigrated from this body to another. So there is no killing as such. There will be no destruction of the soul.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yes. Text 22. Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya.
Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya.
Navani grihnati naroparani.
Navani granati naroparani.
Tatha sharirani vihaya jirnanya.
Tatha sharirani vihaya jirnanya.
Anyani sabhyati navani dehi.
Anyani sanyati navani dehi.
Yes. Someone like to read? Nikhil Prabhu, you wanted to read? Okay. Anyone else?
May I read, Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Translation. As a person puts on new garments, giving up old ones, the soul similarly accepts new material bodies, giving up the old and useless ones. Purport. Change of the body by the atomic individual soul is an accepted fact. Even the modern scientist would not believe in the existence of the soul, but at the same time cannot explain the source of energy from the heart, have to accept continuous changes of the body, which appear from childhood to boyhood and from boyhood to youth, and again from youth to old age. From old age, the change is transferred to another body. This has already been explained in previous verse 2.13. Transference of the atomic individual soul to another body is made possible by the grace of the supersoul. The supersoul fulfills the desire of atomic soul as one friend fulfills the desire of another. The Vedas, like the Mundaka Upanishad as well as the Shvetashvatra Upanishad, compare the soul and the supersoul to two friendly birds sitting on the same tree. One of the birds, the individual atomic soul, is eating the fruit of the tree, and other bird, Krishna, is simply watching his friend. Of these two birds, although they are the same in quality, one is captivated by the fruits of the material tree, while the other is simply witnessing the activities of his friend. Krishna is the witnessing bird, and Arjuna is the eating bird. Although they are friends, one is still the master and the other is the servant. Forgetfulness of the relationship by the atomic soul is the cause of one's changing his position from one tree to another or from one body to another. The jiva, soul, is struggling very hard on the tree of the material body, but as soon as he agrees to accept the other bird as the supreme spiritual master, as Arjuna agreed to do by voluntary surrender unto Krishna for instruction, the subordinate bird immediately becomes free from all lamentations. Both the Mundak Upanishad 3.1.2 and Svetvatra Upanishad 4.7 confirm this. Samane vrakshe purusho nimango nishya sochati muhya manaha justam yadya pasyati anyam isham asya mahimanam iti vita shokaha. Although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer of the fruits of the tree. But if in some way or another he turns his face to his friend, the Lord, and knows his glories, at once the suffering bird becomes free from all anxieties. Arjun has now turned his face towards his eternal friend Krishna and is understanding the Bhagavad Gita from him. And thus, hearing from Krishna, he can understand the supreme glories of the Lord and be free from lamentations. Arjun is advised herewith by the Lord not to lament for the bodily change of his old grandfather and his teacher. He should rather be happy to kill their bodies in the righteous fight so that they may be cleansed at once for all the reactions from various bodily activities. One who lays down his life on the sacrificial altar or in the proper battlefield is at once cleansed of bodily reactions and promoted to a higher status of the life. So there was no cause for Arjun's lamentation. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. So we're going to see now, as we've seen already, that the soul changes from one body to another. Dehino asmin yatha dehe kaumaram yaumanam jara tatha dehantar praptir dhiras tatra na muhyati. So living entity is constantly changing the body from a baby to a toddler to a child to a teenager, youth, to a middle-aged person, to an old man, and eventually to death. In this way, bodies are changing continuously. A toddler looks nothing like a middle-aged man, but it's the same person. So we can understand that bodies have changed over a period of time. So soul keeps on accepting newer and newer bodies. That's the law of nature. Actually, more subtle understanding is like this, that karma is continuously changing. Every moment we are creating new karma. And because of that, we are enjoying or suffering a reaction. For instance, if I touch a burning stove, I'll burn my hand. That's my karma and the reaction to that karma. So there is always, at every moment we are taking choices, we are acting, and we are getting reactions. When the sum total of all the karmas is matured, at that time the body has to be given up. And that is technically known as death, according to the Vedic perspective. Now, the soul and super soul are sitting together. We have discussed this previously also. Samane vrikshe purusho nimagno. So one bird is enjoying the fruit, which is the living entity. The tree is this material nature, and the body also. And the other bird is Paramatma, who is simply an observer, just a witness. So in this case here, Arjun is the soul and Krishna is the Paramatma, and they're both together. So as soon as the soul surrenders to Paramatma, he is instantly freed from all his lamentations and troubles. So in this case, Arjun has now turned his mind towards Krishna. Therefore, it is to be understood that he will be liberated from his miseries also. So although the two birds are in the same tree, the eating bird is fully engrossed with anxiety and moroseness as the enjoyer. So we are enjoying and suffering. We have to struggle so hard, 25 years of education, then so much hard work to create a family. And as soon as the family is created and it becomes matured, it is time for us to leave this world. Some disease, some diabetes, some heart disease, something comes, and time for us to leave this world. So at no point of time are we ever really satisfied with what we've done. Because the body ends. Practically after the age of 60, 70, the human body doesn't have much functioning left. It dwindles away. After the age of 70, 80, the body is just like mere shell. The living entity is merely surviving. So we can see that there is always a cause of sorrow in this material world. Janma mrityu jara vyadhi dukha doshana darshanam. So on the other hand, this body, so what do we do with this body? Then why do we suffer so many miseries? So the body is given for us to realize our original spiritual position. Dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho, dharmena hina pashubhir samanam. So dharmo hi tesham adhiko vishesho. As soon as we get human body, there is athato brahma jigyasa. Ato brahma jigyasa. Now try to understand your spiritual nature. So the responsibility of a human being is very high. One has to realize his spiritual nature and get out of this material existence. So therefore, the instructions of Vedas are meant for human beings. So if this body is sacrificed in the pursuit of knowledge or yoga, then this body is successful. So there are two kinds of deaths which are actually considered very glorious. One is the death of a Brahmana or a sannyasi, which is unknown death. No one knows who that person was or how he died or where he died. A person simply disappears from society and dies quietly, completely illuminated with knowledge of the self and the super soul. That is one glorious death. Another glorious death is of that of a Kshatriya fighting for dharma. So the modern day militaries that we talk of, they are not Kshatriyas. Their fight is also not of righteousness. So therefore, we cannot compare a modern military death to the present day, to the ancient Kshatriyas. So here, Krishna is advising Arjuna to sacrifice this material body. Like we have discussed previously also. There is no guarantee that Arjuna is going to win this war. It is just a possibility. There is no guarantee of it. Arjuna could also die. Therefore, Krishna is advising Arjuna to fight. So if he fights and wins, he would have given liberation to his elderly uncle and teacher, his grandfather and teacher, Bhishma Pitamaha and Dronacharya. But if he loses, which means he dies, then he will anyway enjoy heavenly kingdom. So there is happiness for him in either way. So therefore, there is no cause for lamentation for one who is fighting for dharma. Hare Krishna. Yes, any questions or comments?
Yeah, Prabhuji. Actually, couple of questions.
Yes.
In context of this verse, when specifically reference to the point where they said the soul accepts new material bodies and passes on from one material body to the other one.
Right.
How does this look in the context of the Swarg and Nark Lok that we have been hearing? I mean, my question is more in terms of, is there a concept of afterlife the way we see in Islam and Christianity? Specifically, they talk about Dozak and Jannat and heaven and hell. But here we're talking about Moksha, Vaikunt, and the soul passing from one to the other. So how do we look at that in Hinduism from a context of afterlife?
All right. Now that's a very broad question actually. So I'll try to answer it briefly. But this is going to be a discussion of a later time also. We're going to cover this topic also. But just to tell you briefly, there are, depending on the karma, there are different grades of living entities and different grades of statuses of life. Before we discuss about the various planetary systems in this universe, okay, let us discuss about the planetary systems first. So there are 14 planetary systems, mandalas. They are known as mandala or orbits. So there are 7 upper and 7 lower. The Earth is at the bottom of the upper planetary systems, which is known as the Bhumandal or the middle planetary systems. So these planetary systems, there are heavenly planets beginning from Swargalok. So there is this, for example, Chandralok, Suryalok, these are heavenly planets. You have Swargalok, the abode of Indra. You have Janalok, which is the abode of knowledgeable, pious souls. Tapalok, the abode of great yogis. Maharalok, the abode of greatly saintly munis. There is Brahmalok, the abode of practically liberated souls. So all these heavenly planets, so these are like just, I'm just giving you rough names. These are the planets where all the pious living entities reside. In these planets, there is fantastic lifespan. There is no old age or disease. There is only birth and death. Actually, there is no death also. Living entities are simply thrown out. Here, the existence is absolutely phenomenal. There is no misery of middle planetary systems in these upper planets. Then below us are 7 planetary systems like Sutal, Vital, Atal, Talatal, Patal, like these different planetary systems. These planets are known as Bilaswarga or subterranean heavenly planets. Here the living conditions are also quite nice, but the living entities who reside here have demonic mindsets. Like living entities like Yakshas, Rakshasas, Nagas, they live in these planets. They are fantastically advanced in civilization, but they are very envious and angry. So there is no peace in these planets. There is always constant conflict going on. So depending on the activities, and then there are the middle planetary systems, where the living entities are neither too pious nor too sinful. So they live in a mixture of misery and happiness. At the very bottom of the universe, below the subterranean heavenly planets, are the hellish planets. These hellish planets have subtle existence. There are 28 of them, 28 types of them, and millions of these planets of 28 broad categories, like Tamisra, Andha Tamisra, Puyod, this one, Tamisra, Andha Tamisra, Puyod, Avichimat, Tapta Surmi, Vajrakantaki Shalmali. There are like 28 different types of hellish planets. These planets, various kinds of sinful reactions are punished. So in these planets, the existence is not very long. A person's soul is, after death, is taken to the abode of Yamaraj, where the judgment is carried out, and the soul is then taken to suitable hellish planet to be punished. And after that, he is given birth in a particular type of body, which is suited according to his karma and desires. So this is the subject matter of the 5th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam and also of the Garuda Purana. So this is with regards to the existence of the planets. Just to give you an illustration, on this earth where we live, we have countries like, say, you might have heard of a country called Liberia, where there are man-eaters, like these warlords who kill human beings and eat them up. So there's a country like Liberia, constant civil war is going on, or Syria, constant bombardment is going on, civil war. Plus, then we have a country like India, which is okay, suitably peaceful, but not the best. And then we have countries like Scandinavian countries, where the living standards are exceptionally high. So we can see that even within this planet, we have like middle countries, we have very hellish countries, and we have heavenly countries. So likewise, depending on the karma and the desires, different planets are existing. So the Quranic concept of Dozakh and Jannah is also true. The Christian concept is also correct. The only difficulty is that in Islam and Christianity, these topics are not very elaborately described. And the mechanism of going to these planets or coming back from them is not adequately described. For instance, let me give you an example, how this is the same concept. In Quran, it is mentioned that if you are a sinner, you will burn in hell eternally. Now, according to Srimad Bhagavatam or according to the Vedas, if you kill a cow, that's the greatest sin. Killing a Brahmana or a cow. Killing a Brahmana, a cow, a woman, a tree, they're considered very sinful. So if someone kills a cow, he's taken to a planet which goes by the name of Avichimat. No, not Avichimat, which the planet of Kumbhipak. Now, Kumbhipak, It's like it's a planet made of brass. In that planet, one has to burn for as many years as there are hairs on the body of the cow which he has killed. So you can imagine that most of the people from Finland and Scandinavia are going there because they are human beings and they are doing this sin every day. So now imagine a cow has maybe 1 million hairs. So for 1 million years, one has to reside on that planet. So this is practically eternity. Now, Quran is a small text. So the prophets didn't have enough time to elaborate on all this mechanism. So they said that it is eternal. So that at least people become fearful and they don't commit sin. So another instance is, for example, people in this world are too fond of illicit sex. Having extramarital affairs and premarital, postmarital affairs. Now, according to scriptures, this is extremely sinful. So after death, such a person is taken to a planet known as Tapta Surmi. So in this planet, there are male and female forms made of iron, and they are red hot. So a man or a woman who has indulged in such a lifestyle is meant to embrace a form of opposite sex of this metal. And he's forced to embrace this form again and again. And there he suffers continuously, but he does not die. In hellish planets, there is no death. So because the body is subtle, it's a man, buddhi, ahankar body. So one has the experience of pain, but one doesn't die. So this is how hellish planets are described. So Quran and Bible, they describe them briefly as fires of hell. So even though there are many, many varieties of hells. So yes, all of this exists, and this is only depending on our karma and our desires. Hare Krishna. Does that answer your question, Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhuji. And I'm really stunned with all the knowledge you have. Thank you so much. This is very enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you very much for such good questions.
Guruji, can I ask one question?
Yes, please.
I'm now a little getting confused because, okay, in the material world, you said it's full of misery, right? It's like we achieve nothing, we just struggle and we end.
Yes.
So my question is a little bit that what should we do every day? I'm just trying to be practical now and thinking about this life because I at least don't know where I go or where people go after the kind of they die. So soul moves, but where I don't know. But in terms of practicalness, what we should be doing every day in our lives that might save us from going to these planets you mentioned. That was quite enlightening and also frightening. So, but I think, sorry, this might be a very new question, but my confusion is what we do every day that takes us to some kind of glory. Glory means that you are out of this, circulation and you are going to the right, not planet, but right birth or, no birth after this. So is there any guideline? I know Vedas say something about that, but for people like me, it is not at all practical to go and read them practically because we are living our lives and there are responsibilities to do every day, for the family and for everything. So what is the kind of guideline for people like us in this world so that we at least get to that path somewhere?
Yeah, that's a nice question. So the very fact that you are scared after hearing this is an indication that you are a pious soul. I mean, there are many people who just dismiss it outright, That's why you see in the West, people are not even following Christianity anymore. Even though Christianity is broadly very true, Christianity is an elaborate religion, it tells everything, but no one follows it. So, of course, there are elaborate descriptions of what needs to be done, but we can summarize it very simply. Srimad Bhagavatam says, Savaya pumsham paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje apratihata ahetuki yayatma suprasidati. Savaya pumsham paro dharmo. Every human being's prime duty, yato bhaktir adhokshaje, is to serve the Supreme Lord. Apratihata ahetuki, without any obstruction, without any personal motivation. Apratihata ahetuki yayatma suprasidati. It will bring complete satisfaction to the soul. So, every living being's duty, every human being's duty is to serve the Lord. So one can worship Jesus Christ, one can worship Allah, or one can worship the Supreme Lord. You can worship Vishnu, Narayan, Krishna, any one of the forms of the Lord. So that is to be done. But how is it done? So there are many elaborate procedures. For instance, you can worship the deities according to Pancharatrika Vidhi, or you could perform tapasya in some forest, or you could perform meditations. So there are many methods. But we, the Gaudiyas, we practice. So this is something which I am practicing also myself. If you want, you can also practice it. But this is not the only means. There are many other means also. So we chant the holy names. As we discussed last month also, we chant the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. As much as possible as you can chant. These are authorized mantras. Iti Shodashikam Namnam Kali Kalmashanashanam. This is what the Brahanaradiya Puran says. That this verse, that this particular 16 syllables, Hare Krishna Mahamantra as it is called, is actually the means of deliverance in this age of Kali. You can chant any other name. For instance, the South Indian Sri Vaishnavas, they chant Namo Narayanaya, or Ramakrishna Hari, the Varkaris chant. So all these are different names of the Supreme Lord given by different Sampradaya Acharyas. All of these are bona fide. You can chant any one of these names. We particularly practice the Hare Krishna Mahamantra because it is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who's the Acharya from whom our Sampradaya is coming. And all of us are practicing this. Our Rahul Prabhu, our Pranav Prabhu, Chaya Mataji, with our Nishant Prabhu, we are all practicing this method. So we have been I've been practicing it for the last 27 years. So this is one of the means. By chanting of the holy names, one becomes freed from the past sinful reactions. So of course there are many glories of the holy name, but what we can say is by chanting of the holy names, we are protected from the ill effects of Kali. So iti shodashikam namnam Kali kalmashanashanam. That this age of Kali is extremely sinful. Here the living entities are practically reduced to the level of animals. In fact, lower than animals, because human beings have no conception of good or bad, and they're committing all kinds of sinful, very gross sinful activities. Simply by chanting of the holy names, we remain protected. So our Acharya, our spiritual master, Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, he said that you should chant this Hare Krishna Mahamantra daily. Besides this, you should practice the 4 regulative principles. See, we are cleansing ourselves. We should also prevent ourselves from getting dirty. So the 4 regulative principles protect us from getting dirty. So these principles are no meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, and no illicit sex. Meaning that we should not eat meat, fish, eggs, or prohibited items like this. So for example, in Finland, we get these jelly candies. Even they should be avoided because that's coming from animal bones. Gelatin, jelly, or this rennet and cheese that we get from the supermarkets. So Rahul Prabhu can guide you. I mean, he is an expert in this subject matter. So meat eating should be avoided because that is violence. That contaminates us with sin. Then no intoxication. So alcohol, cigarettes, they should be avoided. And tea and coffee also should be avoided because they are also intoxicants. They contain caffeine and theobromine and stuff like that. Then it comes to intoxication, meat eating, then illicit sex. So no sex life outside marriage. That is not so difficult. I mean, most Indians anyway do that. Then there is no gambling. So no gambling means no lotto, no online, Dream 11 or anything of that sort. And taking it to a more stricter sense, one should also, as far as possible, avoid any form of speculations or speculative investments like cryptocurrencies or stock markets. But that is for a later time. But at the present moment, you can avoid these 4 activities. This makes you pious. This prevents you from being sinful. And then by chanting the Mahamantra or chanting the names of the Supreme Lord, you become freed from sinful reactions. So this is the process.
Prabhu, can I continue just one more thing here?
Yes, please.
Because, okay, I'm not at all denying that these 4 things are what you mentioned are the ones that you should get rid of, to get to that kind of piousness. But also what I've been following throughout my life, I mean, I will be honest about that. Only thing I have done is helping people and making them happy with my help. I mean, happy means that they are satisfied, they get out of the mess they might be in, and they get some help from my side.
Yes.
So I believed the Brahmana, it should be Brahmana by the karma, by the thoughts, not with what he eats. That was my concept, at least. And I try to tell this to many people, that this is how you behave, how you treat others, how you make others feel. That's the thing that matters, that people never forget. And maybe that's a karma that is more and more essential. But now my concept is now destroyed, because it is totally on different terms. And that's where my confusion was, actually. So that's why I asked this question. And secondly, isn't this also a greed? Because a person knowing the journey, that you go to these planets, if you are like this, I mean, it's a journey that point A to point B, and to reach point B, if you have left with the life of 20 years, 30 years, I don't know. Nobody knows the lifespan anyhow. So you take a stand and you start doing these things, but isn't there a greed behind that also, that, okay, this gives me mukti from the previous sins I have done, and now I go to this planet because I'll follow this kind of rituals for 30 years or whatever life I will be having. So isn't this some part of greed there? Is it right? Because the pious mind should not have any expectations, and this is done with the expectation now.
Oh, that's a very nice question, actually, Prabhu. So what you are saying, I fully agree with your point, actually. So in the 8th chapter, 16th verse, Krishna also says the same thing. A Brahma Bhuvanal Loka Punar Avartino Arjuna Mama Upetitu Konteya Punar Janmana Vidyate. Actually, even if one reaches up to the planet of Brahma, one will still have to suffer death and come back. So a pious soul, or we can say a transcendentalist, is not interested in the good or bad of this material world. He is just interested in identifying his own spiritual identity, knowing his own spiritual identity, not interested in piety or sin of this material world. We don't belong here. For example, we're living in Finland. They have cultures, traditions, and everything, but we don't belong in that sense. We're living here, so we don't have any emotional connection to it. So a transcendentalist also has nothing to do with the good or bad of this material world. There may be hell, there may be heaven. He's not interested in all of that. He is just interested in knowing his true identity. Jivera Swarup Hoy Krishnera Nitya Das. Krishnera Tatastha Shakti Bheda Bhed Prakash. Just like you are at your home right now, you are with your wife and children. That's your natural position. If you go out to the shopping mall to buy something, that may be nicer. I mean, the Jumbo Mall may be much better looking than your own home, but you don't live there. You just finish your business, you come back home. No matter how good or bad your home is, it's your home. So likewise, our original spiritual identity is as the servant of the Supreme Lord. We don't belong in this material world. Not amongst the Devatas, not amongst the Danavas, not amongst Brahmaji, nor amongst the Yamaraj. No, we don't belong in this world at all. Our eternal position is to serve the Supreme. The desire within our heart to serve others and to see them happy is actually a reflection of the original desire that we have in our heart to serve the Supreme and see him happy. Somehow, because we are covered over by Maya, we are trying to discover that original position. So we try to derive satisfaction by bringing happiness in this world. Somehow or the other, if we revive our original spiritual consciousness, then we'll be beyond all this piety and sin. Actually, the purpose of the chanting of holy names is not to even be pious. One may suffer also, it doesn't matter. Rakhevi marevi jo ichha toha, nitya dasa prati tuya adhikar. Whether you keep me or you destroy me, I mean, it's your nitya dasa prati tuya adhikar. This is what Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, that this is your desire, whatever you do. My only desire is to serve to you. As Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Mama Janmani Janmanishware Bhavtat Bhaktir Ahetuki Tvai. That I just want to be a devotee of yours, life after life. I don't care whether you give me another birth in heaven or in hell, or you take me back to your spiritual world, or you keep me where I am. But I only desire that you give me service to your lotus feet. Does that clear your doubt, Prabhu?
Yes, I need to digest this a little bit. So I'll think through, Prabhu.
Yeah, please think through this. These are very advanced topics actually, because the question came, so I had to discuss them right now.
Yeah.
And,
the fight. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, Prabhu, that just to add to that, isn't it, Prabhu, that even if you help some human being, and if the cause is not related to the Supreme, then it is going to cause you a bondage, and you will have to come back to pay for that as a reaction. I mean, because that will cause you a bondage, even if you are trying to help someone with, let's say, with good intentions. Like, for example, I was asking a question to Prabhuji some time back that now there is a war going on in Ukraine. What will happen if we, let's say, donate some money to Red Cross or some organization? So I think the answer that I understood was that even if we make some payment, ultimately, if that money is going to be, let's say, used for feeding those people, and if they are going to serve only the meat to those people, then we are also going to get sin for that. So it will cause us a bondage. So we have to be very careful when we talk about helping others.
Yes. See, like give it a very, sage perspective, or we say we can just give it a thought. Now we are talking about a war between Russia and Ukraine. Russians, Ukrainians, Finns, Swedes, we have been fighting a war against animals all our life. A few thousand men have died in this war, but millions of animals are getting killed every day. So it is just a reaction. It's just a reaction to that. Jivo jivasya jivanam. You kill one animal, you will be also killed. So somehow or the other, there will always be a reaction to every action. So if we think, oh, this is good or this is bad, actually we are also in illusion. This is just the play of Maya. Maya is just acting from one form to another. So there is no question. So if we try to help someone, we are also becoming implicated in the same karma. The living entity has got nothing to do with this material nature. Our Savai Pumsham Paro Dharmo Yato Bhakti Radhokshate. Our job is to serve the Supreme and become free from this misconception of the body itself. Completely free. So there is no good or bad in this world. Everything is inauspicious. Because good or bad, everything in this world ends in death. So we can discuss this topic in more details. If you wish, we can take some other time and then we can discuss these topics on the transmigration of the soul and different types of bodies. Yes, Chaya Mataji, you have a question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
As you said, Brahma ji made this planetary system, and Earth is a middle planetary system. So in science, we learned that solar system planets, Uranus, Mercury, Pluto. So how we can differentiate those planetary systems? Those are in same one where Earth is there.
So there are different types of planets. So our earthly understanding is very limited. Actually, we haven't even explored our own solar system. There are millions and millions of planets in this universe. In all the planets we talk about, this Brahmalok, Swargalok, or this Bilaswarg and hellish planets, actually we can see all of them through our eyes. We can see them through our we can see them through the, when we look at the sky at night. So the modern science is a very rudimentary science. It's practically aboriginal science. hardly any understanding. Like we don't even know what is life. Ask any scientist or doctor or surgeon, just ask them what is life. They have no idea. They know that there is blood, there is plasma, there is red corpuscles, white blood corpuscles. They know there is this or that. There are minerals, vitamins, but they have no idea. They have no idea of what life itself means. Suppose a person dies of shock or dies of heart attack. Everything is still there. Why can't they just revive? Because they don't know soul. And if they don't know soul, their science is extremely inadequate. Just to give a very crude analogy, a mechanic knows how your car works, but a mechanic can never understand the design of your car. What metal alloys are used, why they are used, why only 10 mm or 15 mm bolts are used, not 25 or 15 mm or 5 mm. So he has no idea. He just knows what is there. He can observe and he can fix that, but he cannot design it. He doesn't have the education to design it. So likewise, this modern scientists, they just know gross material elements. They have no understanding of even the subtle elements of this existence. So the so-called science and technology is just polished ignorance. It is not wrong, but it is incomplete and inadequate. A mechanical engineer cannot tell you how to perform a heart surgery, though he can tell you how to fix your car. So likewise, a modern scientist cannot comment on soul and life, and certainly not on the activities of karma or anything. And that's why you see this modern society is so atheistic and immoral. So yes, so there are these planets, but we don't know where they exist. We can just see them through the eyes, but we have to read the scriptures to understand how to reach them. So even if we say, suppose we have gone to moon, nobody is able to live on the moon. They have to come back. They cannot live there. Yes. So shall we stop here now?
Yes, I have a request actually. If you can discuss this topic a little bit in more details, not in this session because 1 hour is not sufficient. Because now the question I have is science. Okay. Where the science fits into this whole context. I mean, some superpower above and then there is science below. I think that's what I always believed, because nobody knows how the birth happens and nobody knows how death happens. What science does is between kind of survival and helping us. I'm just now overreacting a little bit, but the question is how science is really working with this, whole concept. That's where I'm now getting a little bit stuck, but we can discuss might be when we have time. A little bit more time.
Yeah, it's okay. Just to give you some food for thought, we can say that this the science that we study is material science. It is dealing with the five gross elements. That's all. It is not even reaching to the level of mind, intelligence, and false ego. So this science is science of material elements. It's a mechanistic science. But what we are studying is the spiritual science. Jnana. What we are studying is jnana, knowledge of the soul. What is karma? How to get out of this material entanglement itself. So this is known as a spiritual science, and you can practice it. Just like in gross science, we have experiments. In spiritual science, you can experiment by following the rules and regulations of bhakti. And then you will see the change in your own consciousness. So it's the science of consciousness. When you practice it, you will see the change in yourself, and then you can understand that this science actually works, that this is a science. So yes, we can take a separate session and have this discussion also.
Thank you, Guruji.
Yeah, I was just going to say that a lot of question that Nikhil Prabhu is asking also points towards Srimad Bhagavatam. So, and we have daily sessions ongoing because a lot of such questions are being raised in those sessions as well. And I think the answers lies there as well.
Yes, so we can fix up a time and then we can have a discussion. So my request would be you can note down your questions and you can forward them so that I can go through and then we can directly start. and then we can have more questions in the session also.
Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Okay, so thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki
Hare
jai.
Krishna.